The live stream has started. Good afternoon. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service Local Pension Board. Before consideration of today's business, I will outline the protocols for the meeting. Today's meeting is being live streamed to the public via Microsoft Teams and is also being recorded. When members are speaking, they may choose to use their video. If the Council's live stream fails during the meeting and we cannot share the proceedings, we will adjourn the meeting so that access can be restored. If the issue cannot be resolved, we will halt the meeting and the remaining business will be concluded at a future date. If a member experiences a technical issue, we will adjourn for a short period to try and re-establish their connection. As members are called to speak, they can be reminded to switch on their microphone. If you cannot be heard, the Democratic officer will advise you. The vote will be taken by the roll call function and the result announced by the Democratic Services Officer. Where a member has declared a non-registrable interest, a disclosable pecuniary interest, or an interest by virtue of any trade union membership in a matter, they must leave the virtual meeting. Their departure will be confirmed and they will be invited to rejoin the meeting at the appropriate time. To confirm the procedure for today's meeting is that members of the forum who wish to speak on an item should indicate by using an X in the chat box function, which is being monitored. If they do not have this function, then they can use the raise your hand function to ask a question. Before we start today's business, I will ask the committee members to confirm they are present and state their role on the board. Catherine Billing. Can you state your name and your role?
Yeah, Catherine Billing. My role is employer's representative.
Thank you. Debbie Goodread.
Yes, Debbie Goodread, and my role is employer representative.
Thank you. Phil Martin. Phil Martin, you're on mute. Can you say you'll confirm you're present and your role on the board?
Yeah, sorry, it's Phil Martin and I'm a retired member.
Thank you. Gary Rich.
Gary Rich, employees representative.
Thank you. Victoria Wallens Hancock.
Hi, Vicky Wallens Hancock, and I'm an employer representative.
Thank you. Stuart Whitworth.
Good afternoon, Stuart Whitworth, and I'm an employee representative.
Thank you. I can also confirm that we have the following officers present. Julia Harvey from Resources, Matthew Allen, Employee Liaison Officer, Matthew Davis, Assistant Pension Benefits Manager, Melissa Dyer, Business Reporting Manager, Renata Oakes, Senior Workforce Partner, and myself, Rowena Brebner, Democratic Services Officer. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. We have full membership here today, so I have no apologies. The second on the item on the agenda for today is the election of chairman. Could I please ask for nominations for the election of chairman? Could someone propose and second a nomination, please?
I propose Victoria Wallens Hancock.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, Stuart Whitworth seconds that.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. If you could indicate whether you're for, against or abstaining. Catherine Billing.
Catherine Billing, for.
Debbie Goodread.
Debbie Goodread, for.
Martin.
Phil Martin, for.
Gary Rich.
Gary Rich, for.
Victoria Wallens Hancock.
Victoria Wallens Hancock, for.
Stuart Whitworth.
Stuart Whitworth, for.
Thank you. That's a unanimous vote in favour of Victoria Wallens Hancock as chairman. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, all. Thank you for voting me back in as chair of the board for yet another year. So I will carry on with the rest of the agenda. So agenda item 3 is declaration of interests. Are there any declaration of interest, please, before I move forward? Nope. So I will move on to agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting, which was on the 28th of October 2020. If I could ask you all to read through page by page of those minutes and highlight whether there is anything you want to raise. Page 1 of the minutes, page 2, page 3, page 4. Please place an X in the chat box if you wish to propose or second the minutes, please. Catherine Billing propose and Stuart Whitworth second. Rowena will now conduct the roll call vote. When your name is called, please state if you are for or against the proposal or if you are abstaining.
Catherine Billing,
Catherine Billing, for.
Debbie Goodread,
Debbie Goodread, for.
Phil Martin,
Phil Martin, 4.
Gary Rich,
Gary Rich, 4.
Victoria Wallens Hancock,
Victoria Wallens Hancock, 4.
Stuart Whitworth.
Stuart Whitworth, 4.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chairman. They have been approved.
Thank you very much indeed, everyone. So moving on to agenda item 5 on the agenda, which is Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service Local Pension Board business update. So I will hand over to Matt Davies, please, for the update. And if you wish to ask a question or make a comment during this update, please put an X in the box. Thank you.
Right, so it's the usual update for me, really, nothing too unusual in there. Starting with the membership movements of the schemes. We are getting down now to very few members remaining in the legacy schemes. So starting with the 1992 scheme, we're left now with just 15 active members in that scheme. 10 of them are fully protected, so they'll stay in the scheme, and 5 are left to taper over. Not really any movement in the deferred membership, a few more pensioners and a couple more widows. But during the period, we did have 2 further taper protected members move from the 92 scheme over into the 15 scheme, and just 1 retirement. Similar picture for the 2006 scheme. We're down to just 21 active protected members in there. 18 of those are fully protected and 3 are taper protected. Again, a couple of retirements, but nothing too major. Modified scheme, down to just 22 active, 11 deferred, 55 pensioners, and there's a couple more retires from that membership. And then in the 2015 scheme, we've now had those 2 taper protected members from the 92 scheme move over. 10 new members join the scheme, so that takes the total active membership now of the 15 scheme up to 610. So obviously the vast majority is now in that scheme. Moving on to the Isles of Scilly, we actually had a little bit of membership movement for them in this quarter, and we had 1 leave from the 15 scheme, and 1 of the taper protected members in the 2006 scheme also left, which meant we've got 2 less active members and 2 more deferred members. Was there any questions at all about the membership stats? No. Okay, moving on then. We've had 1 meeting of the South Western Wales Fire Pension Officers Group. It was shortly before Christmas, and the minutes haven't actually been typed up yet. I have had them just in note form, and if I'm honest, everything that we covered, as you would expect, is going to come up at some point in this meeting, so I don't think I need to go into it any further. But it's just basically around McLeod, immediate detriment, and a little bit about the exit payment regulations, which came in November. Sorry for the background noise if you're all picking it up. There are actually some builders in the house, so I do apologise. Moving on to the LGA bulletins, there have been 3 issued since our last meeting. They were all circulated for the board members to read. So are there any questions coming up in those updates at all?
No questions from myself, Matt, but just to let everybody know that those bulletins were circulated to unions and have formed basis of some communications during this time since the last meeting as well.
No questions, so move on to the risk register. There's been a few changes on the risk register. The risk 24 has been increased at the request of the chair in the October meeting. Risk 24 is the additional work and queries that are coming into the Cornwall Pension Fund team, being generated by Cornwall Council's voluntary workforce reduction programme. Now, obviously, that's a local government scheme, but it's the same resource that administers that scheme that administers the fire scheme. So the fact that we're spending more time on that is giving us less time to spend on firefighter queries, unfortunately. So we are suffering some delays. Oracle Cloud, due to the experience that Cornwall Fire and Rescue and we are having since implementation, we have increased that risk as well. And lastly, member self-service. There's no change to the risk rating here, but I've just included some additional wording in there about the progress that we were having with the project. Member self-service does come up in any other business as well, so I'll give you a further update when we get to that part of the agenda. Next question.
Catherine, would you like to come in with a question?
Yeah, thank you, Catherine Billing. Not necessarily a question, but and Matt, I don't know if it is worth waiting till any other business, but just in and around that, I know we, Chair, I know you've escalated the risks and heightened them, but is it just worth having the discussion just to widen the conversation and to raise that awareness just around those real impacts? Because whilst we, escalate them on the risk register, I think sometimes it's just worth going back, revisiting and understanding the real impact that I believe it's having, number one, across the service, but also number two, with the wider team and indeed Matt. So I think it's just worth that discussion, really.
Yeah, I mean, to give you an idea, we normally deal with about probably 100 retirements a month in the team, and I expect it will be 2 to 3 times that number in April. And that unfortunately coincides with pensions increase, which is our busiest time of the year. Tax year end, couldn't really come at a worse time. It's a bit of a perfect storm, really. So yeah, I'm afraid there will be delays.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I know we'll be discussing it further along in this item around where we are with McLeod and what the next steps are and the potential implications of that, which has a big impact on the capacity risk as well. So I am really keen to make sure that that is reflected in the risk register. From our perspective, the fire service has escalated and raised through DLT reporting and CDT assurance reporting the issue of capacity and how that is potentially impacting on the work regarding fire pensions with the forthcoming changes that are happening. And I think it's really important that we continue to reiterate this and raise it as a risk through here, because the work's only going to increase, isn't it? And the demand on your team is just going to increase as well. So I think there is going to be demand for more resources to deal with what is becoming ever more complicated fire pension administration.
Yeah, and we were operating with a vacancy. We had 2 new starters a week ago on Monday, but obviously that takes some time to have any real impact on the amount of work that we can clear. One of them has got pensions experience. She has worked for us before, so we are lucky there. But generally it takes a good 12 months, 18 months really before people have got the experience to start making a big impact on the work volumes.
I think as well it is in and around the management of expectations for staff as well. And I know, we have, and Matt yourself has kind of worked hard to bridge that gap with communications, but I do think we might need to have a broader discussion around how best to get that out to people, because whilst we've communicated it out, Matt, I know that later on you'll discuss around those requests though for people's final figures R&D coming in, and it's around how we manage the expectations, I think, of our staff. So, you know, they're not feeling as though they're being at all let down, which they're not, but it's around that management of expectations, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Kath. And just to pick up on that point, since the previous board meeting, the senior leadership team plus Matt met with the Fire Brigade Union to discuss some of the challenges that we're having. And I think what was really positive is we agreed moving forward to do some joined up communications to staff. So picking up on your point there, Kath, of our communication routes and how well read and understood they are, I think doing joint communications with the Fire Brigade Union will really help in relation to managing those expectations. And one thing that we're really keen to do is, I know, Matt, with all the national announcements coming out, we referred to it previously, that it does generate a lot of calls to yourself and your team. And through our communications and making sure that everybody is aware of what's going on, I would hope to reduce that, because obviously it's the same capacity that is needed to actually deal with the issues is actually spent on the telephone,
Exactly.
talking it through with people. So we need to utilise the resources that we do have to the best possible degree. And I think communications is the key bit for me there, in making sure that everybody's aware of that situation, and actually when it is appropriate to be contacting the pension administration team.
Yeah, and you know, you see it, and obviously, I know like Twitter isn't exactly, you know, the world's best news, but that's where you see people's thought processes play out. And you know, I've seen people post, obviously, it's been announced that obviously a judgment's been made, and then you see people going, the judgment's been made, now pay up. And it's like, yeah, but
it's that easy. Yeah.
But that's it. But that is again around what people are thinking. You know, what is the hold up? What is the problem? And just pay up is a considerable amount of number one, understanding how that's going to be calculated, and then the actual process of putting it in place for each individual person. So yeah, I think it is that, again, it's all around the expectations of the comms, but thank you, Chair. I just think it was worth that wider discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to continue, Matt?
Yep, love to. So breaches register, there have been no new breaches since the last meeting, so there's no update to provide there. Complaints log, again, we've had no formal complaints in the last quarter. As we've just said, though, I would reiterate that we are getting more and more firefighters that are coming across as quite frustrated with the lack of progress with McLeod for the reasons that we just discussed. And we're getting a lot of requests now for comparative estimates for firefighters. And we did have one firefighter who's actually requested 10 different estimates between the 31st of March 2021 and the 31st of October 2023. Going up pretty much in quarterly intervals, although some of them are only 8 days apart. I've tried to explain to him that you know, the differences are absolutely trivial, and that we would provide an estimate to the first date, and anything after that we just have to discuss in theory. But he wasn't very happy, but we haven't had any further comeback on that.
Thanks, Matt. And I think that does link into the conversation we've just had. But I think if we can't manage those expectations and gain that understanding, I think we might have to expect that we could get some complaints, or for those to increase going forward if people's expectations aren't met. So I think there is some work to do over the next quarter around making sure people understand what the current situation is and why we can't progress at this point in time. However, I also think people are going to become frustrated, aren't they? Because the McLeod case has been going on for such a long time. You know, the judgment's been out now for a while. So I think we could expect to see some complaints going forward.
So moving on to IDRPs, similar, no new IDRPs, but as you say, Vicky, I think probably it's only a matter of time before we probably do have a formal complaint. Any other business? COVID-19, we've had to change the way we've been working with lockdown 3. just because of the increased risk now in Cornwall, we've gone from having about half of the team in every day. We've reduced daily presence to just 6. We're doing that on a rota basis with separate bubbles to try and avoid the possibility of the entire team getting infected if it was to happen. So we're kind of rotating the team around, but again, because we've got just 6 in the office every day, that's even having a further negative impact on what we're able to do every day. We did, however, manage to meet the deadline for providing the Government Actuaries Department with the 2020 valuation data by the 31st of December. So I was pleasing to get that done. Member self-service. I was hoping that this was going to be all good news and I would be providing a demonstration of the system today. We should have had all of our training last week. However, when the software supplier went in to test the system before training, unfortunately there was quite a few issues I identified. Now, this was actually installed in the week before the first lockdown in March 2020, so it's actually sat dormant for 12 months. Unfortunately, when they went in to test it, there were a number of connectivity issues. Some of the email setup that was produced back in February last year wasn't working, so we've had to delay that. It's still not resolved, and they've had to reinstall the entire system over the last week or so. So additional costs, additional delays, but hopefully we'll still be able to roll this facility out to firefighters this year, hopefully with the annual benefit statements in August. And obviously this will have a great impact on the team because these people that are requesting 10 estimates can have those figures. They'll just be doing them themselves. The only problem being I don't know yet, as we haven't seen the system, what the plans are for the McLeod implementation, because obviously we haven't got the software yet to do the McLeod work, so I very much doubt it will be on the member self-service system. So it still won't satisfy all members, but it will enable some members to produce some figures when we do finally get it live.
Thanks, Matt. Just to clarify, the recent issues that we've had with the self-service, is that internal Cornwall Council system issues or is that external software issues?
Well, I don't think it's 100% to blame, but I would say the majority of it is Cornwall Council. Okay.
Are you confident that the issues are in hand, or do we need to raise that through a different forum?
Pretty confident it will get fixed. There's been some progress this morning. They managed to reinstall it by lunchtime, but we're still struggling to get the connectivity to get the emails out, which is absolutely essential because, as you can imagine, if it's online, members have to register and then they get emailed their passwords. But if we can't email out to anybody, it isn't going to really be much use. But hopefully we'll get some progress by the next meeting. If I need any help, Vicky, I will give you a shout.
Yeah, brilliant. If you're coming across any other issues that need to be raised before the next meeting, if you can let me know, we can try and get some traction before then.
I think our biggest problem is obviously because we haven't done anything for 12 months, we don't have a project manager anymore because they've moved on. And I think Cornwall Council CIoS have moved the way they work, changed the way they work a little bit, and they don't have project managers as such now. But we'll see. Hope.
Okay.
I'll still hope yet, as I've been saying for 4 years, I think. Next item was the response to the public service pension schemes consultation. So that was sent in October by Cornwall Fire and Rescue. The highlighted there the response. Luckily, the government have chosen to go with the deferred choice underpin, which is our favoured option, and they did state the reasons for going for that were very much what we'd said, in that it means that firefighters can make an informed decision. It's not based on assumptions, and it does reduce the chances of further challenge. Obviously, it doesn't help us so much with workload because it does mean we're going to be doing this now for potentially another 20 years, but at least we don't have to do them all in one go. I had a meeting this morning with Fire Technical Group, which went through the McLeod changes, Unfortunately, there isn't really a great deal of update at all on the situation. We're still waiting for guidance on how we deal with such items as the annual allowance and how we would recalculate all the pension inputs over the period. Any tax relief that would be due on contributions that need to be paid between the two different schemes if they're moving from the 15 to the 92. Any interest that's due on those contributions, or any interest in fact that's due on any benefits that should have been paid, governance arrangements, software updates, how to deal with transfers in. As you can see, really there's still a lot of things that are outstanding, and basically the concern and the risk is if we do make any payments based on the rough guidance we've got, the consequences of that is going to come back to the Fire and Rescue Authority. So although it is the Fire and Rescue Authority's decision, they do need to bear in mind really the risks that are involved and the potential costs and additional work that might be required to correct anything that could be changed by the legislation when it does come in. The main feeling around the country at the moment is to wait for that further guidance, and I think there are only, well, I think there's only actually one fire authority that's decided to push ahead and apply the immediate detriment guidance.
Thanks, Matt. And if I can just add in there that we have been liaising with the rest of the sector through their engagement forums off the back of the announcements from the consultation. And there has also been communication from the pension lead for the National Fire Chiefs Council, Ian Hayton, who has recommended Fire and Rescue Services to hold tight really until all the technical guidance is available, so that we don't have to then undo the work that's been done. So I think there is a collective view, Matt, even though one fire and rescue service is progressing, that the others are going to sit and await for further guidance. And that communication from the National Fire Chiefs Council has also gone to the unions. So there is a collective view and a collective response. But it doesn't get away from the fact of what we were saying earlier, that there will still be members' frustrations that just want their pensions sorted in light of the announcements that have been made. But I think we're very clear of our position. That position has been communicated to the rest of the service through staff communications, but also picking up on Kath's point from earlier, I think we probably just need to keep reinforcing that viewpoint through all of our communication channels.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, there's 45 admin authorities, so everyone really needs to try and be consistent in what they're doing, and we don't really want to be in a position where some people are being rectified and some aren't. So that's good news to hear that. Yeah. The next technical group now, we're having them fortnightly, so hopefully there'll be an update soon on some of the outstanding items, and we might be able to start progressing some of the remedy cases. The next item is the annual pensions increase. Now, every year we increase pensions that are in payment. They're increased in line with the increase in the consumer prices index over the 12-month period to the previous September, and the increase that we'll be applying on the 12th of April is 0.5%. That is through Oracle Cloud system that we calculate and we apply this. However, we've actually already tested the payments for the 92 scheme pensioners, and I'm pleased to say that that is working, and we've had 100% correct on the test runs that we've done on those. So quite confident that that will go through okay in March's payroll, ready for April payments. The HMRC compliance team contacted us a little bit out of the blue, if I'm honest, because they were concerned at the lack of contact they'd had from Cornwall Fire and Rescue, and they received a low number of accounting for tax return submissions, and that's in comparison to other schemes, fire schemes across the country. Now, I have tried to explain to HMRC that this is due to the low number of members that we've got in each scheme, the fact that the pay is relatively low. We have a small number of whole-time firefighters, but we've still actually been asked for a considerable amount of information from HMRC just to prove that this is the case and to prove that our internal controls are compliant with their regulations. I actually provided all of that to HMRC on Monday. So with a bit of luck, it'll be a little while before they come back and question any of that, or hopefully they'll just be happy with everything we've provided. Otherwise, it could see quite a bit more work for finance and ourselves to actually go through year by year to prove the calculations that we've made and that we haven't had more breaches of the annual allowance or the lifetime allowance, which is generally what creates the accounting for tax return submissions. So hopefully that one will go away.
Thanks, Matt. I do think it's just worth noting, though, that that's another pressure on you and your team's capacity, because it was an unplanned, unscheduled audit, and with everything else that's going on, it does detract from your main focus, doesn't it? So I do think all of these things together just add those additional pressures onto your team.
It's a lot of work because they wanted us to go back to 2012. So yeah, it was an awful lot to go through each, and we've just had to provide the number of cases that exceeded the annual allowance and the lifetime allowance. At the moment, they haven't asked for any personal information, which is the next stage. If they don't agree with the submissions that were made by finance, then it means that we'll have to look into it more closely. But I don't know what the deadlines for that will be. And lastly for me is the data quality scores. Since 2018, the pensions regulator has required all pension funds to report on their record keeping, and we have to provide in the annual scheme return a measure of our data quality test. It's split into two parts: common data, which is used to identify each member, and it's by its name, it's common to all scheme members, and then conditional data, which varies from scheme to scheme, and it's conditional factors affected some members, as in the design of the scheme and the events that occur in their individual membership. We have to provide this, and although they don't give us actually specific targets, the TPR just expect that our data should be of a high standard. So in order to complete this return, we run a report which is provided by our software supplier against the pension system, and then I provide those figures in the scheme returns to the TPR. And I'm pleased to say, as you can see from the table on page 17, both the common data and the conditional data have improved on last year, with the common data now at 97.1%, an increase of 2.6% on last year, and the conditional data at 95.3%, which is an increase on 8.5%. Now, those percentages are the number of records that don't have any missing data items. So we will continue to work on that once we get the full report from Hayward, so we can identify where all those errors are and start correcting them.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think it's worthy of note the high percentages there and the massive increase, particularly since 2018. And a huge thank to the administration team, because that's a huge effort. I know we've had previous conversations that we probably need to keep an eye on that over the next year, with the impact of Oracle and the risks we've identified on the register regarding the accuracy of Oracle. And I think that's something that we really need to keep an eye on. Just to pick up on the Oracle point, actually, I meant to mention it earlier when we were talking about risks, just to update the board that we are continuing to experience issues in relation to Oracle. And the accuracy of staff pay. As a result of that, we've been involved in an internal audit of Oracle in relation to pay, and we have identified a number of issues with the Oracle team which are being worked through. There is a meeting being held on the 11th of March looking at how to take that forward, and the options are that we will continue to utilise Oracle with some fixes to be put in place, or that the service seeks a bespoke fire payroll system. So that's the conversations that we're having at the moment, and hopefully be able to update at the next board of where we are with that, because I know that will have a huge impact on your team, Matt, in relation to the system that you're getting information from. So yeah, there's a few things around Oracle at the moment, but particularly in relation to that data quality point, I think it's important to point out that we might not be able to maintain such a high standard of data quality depending on the impact of the system and the issues we are currently facing.
Yeah, and even last year we had time to work through the error reports. I mean, the way it's going this year, I don't know whether we'll have the resource there to correct a lot of the errors like we have in the past. So to some extent, correcting legacy errors would have offset any errors that have come up from the cloud. But if we don't have time for that, then yeah, potentially we will see those numbers going down. That's it from me, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions from any other board members, please? Stuart.
I was just wondering, Vicky, if it's worth including that HMRC item on the risk register, or with the potential impact that it might have on Matt's team, or whether we just put it within, I think it's item 24 on the risk register at the moment.
That's the HMRC audit,
Yeah.
Stuart. Yeah, I can add that to risk 24 if you like.
And
Yeah, it probably does fit there, doesn't it,
yeah.
Stuart?
Hopefully at the next meeting we'll be discussing that you've had feedback from them and they're happy with the return that you've given.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
You've reduced the risk again accordingly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Big thanks, Matt, as normal, regarding your report, and the report has been noted by the panel, so thank you very much indeed. Moving on the agenda to agenda item number 6, which is Cornwall and Isles of Scilly Fire and Rescue Service training update, and I will hand over to Matt Allen, please.
Thanks, Vicky. Just to update everyone on where we are, it's obviously just to bear in mind this is accurate up to the 26th of January. That's when the report was written. I understand a couple of you have done some training since that date, which wouldn't have been included in this training report. But just to, if you've got the screens in front of you, if you can turn to page 33, which is where it's sort of the main bones of it starts, is just to really highlight that obviously what we're looking for is 15 credits over 2 years, a rolling 2 years, based on obviously when you've joined, the rolling 2 years starts. Now, some of you, as we already discussed previously, are further down the line, if you like, the 2 year windows and others. So hence why there's a little bit of a difference in some of the scores that we've got coming through. But if we looked at 4.1, which is really the table we're all interested in, is where everyone sits. So the good news is it's all going generally in the right direction, which is good. So for likes of Vicky and Catherine, you're above the 15 credits, so that's really good. And in fact, Catherine, you've lost 2, so that's even better that you're still within above the 15, which is good. Debbie, I know you've got 10 at the moment. You're showing as amber. I know we've had issues with the TPR toolkit online. I just want to, if you manage to sort it, great. If not, obviously see me again, if you like, afterwards offline, and we'll try and resolve that issue. But I think once you've got those toolkit done, you'll find then that your credits will go up and you'll easily pass the 15 then, which will be good. Stuart, again, you're in the right sort of ballpark. You've had a few drop off last time. I think this time, looking at my spreadsheet where I've got everything listed, the ones where mainly I would suggest you can pick up the points are those TPR trustee toolkits, because I think you've lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those over the sort of the last half year. So if you do those, you only need 2 to go above 15 anyway. Going to skip to Gary next, and Gary, obviously you're a fairly newish starter, but you're on 13, so you're very close as well. So all in all, it's in the right movement. The only one I haven't mentioned there is Phil. Phil, I know we've had a few issues, but it may be that you've done the training, not sent it in to me or whatever, or to Jade as well. But just to let you know, the last training I've got for you was back on the 22nd of May 2019. But I know just before this course started, you said that you'd done some more toolkit ones. So if you can just let me know those, ping me an email, I'll add those on, and then obviously that will increase your score. But also I'm aware about bulletins wise, I think most of you have got the maximum number of bulletin score points, which I think is, just going to check now, which is 6 credits over a 2 year period. Most of you have got some of those in credit as well. And again, same thing for Phil. If you can just let me know if you read any of the fire bulletins, just let me know which ones, and then I'll add those to your score. But all in all, I have to say, looking through, it's all moving in the right direction. You're all, I think, some of you are better than I would have sort of expected, and the rest of you are moving towards that, all in all. So overall, pretty happy with that. And that's it. That's the end of my report, quick and easy.
Thanks, Matt. That's really helpful. And I think in relation to the bulletins, so Jade does send them to all board members, and
Yes.
there is a voting button on those that
There
does
is.
trigger back to Jade that those have been read. So if I can just
Yes.
remind people that as and when you receive those and read them through, if you click on the voting button, then Jade automatically logs when people have read and understood those bulletins. And I know she forwards those to you, Matt, so
She
you can
does,
keep track of those. So I'm going to bring in Deb first, if that's okay, and then I'll bring in Phil.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just to say briefly, Matthew, that I was on leave last week, so next week I hope to pick those back up, but I did try a couple of times and couldn't access, so I will make contact with yourself so I can get those completed.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. I don't know, when I went back onto the trustee toolkit, actually, I did have to re-register, so I don't know whether they reset the system after a certain amount of time, but I did have to re-register with them because it wouldn't recognise my email address. So I don't know whether there's an issue there.
I was struggling to register, but I seem to be in a loop, so I will try again. If not, I'll come back to yourself, Matthew. Thank you.
No problem.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'll bring in Phil, please.
Yeah, Chair, just for completeness for the meeting, yeah, I have been very tardy in my completion of training, but I can confirm that all the available training and the documents I needed to read, I've completed from what I can see. But I'll perhaps have a chat offline, and definitely, Matt, I'll send you those details through. I did
Brilliant.
send them through to Jade this morning.
Okay, that's fine.
Through to you as well.
Yeah, that's great. If you can, that'd be great. Any, what I would say is any training or TPR toolkits, do send them to me. And I know Jade already, and that's a good process that Jade uses. So I think if you keep doing that with the bulletin, then she sends it to me when I write the report. So that's fine. But to be honest, either one of us is okay because I'll get the report from Jade anyway.
Lovely, thank you all, and thank you, Matt. I think it's really helpful to have that as a regular update and see where we all are. And I'm really pleased with the direction that we're going in on those as well, because I do recognise it's really busy, challenging times at the moment, and you know, training does take time, but it is really important that all of our board members are up to date and have up-to-date knowledge regarding what's a really complex area. And I know if I don't keep on top of it, then it's quite easy to slip and fall behind. But that's where I particularly find the bulletins really helpful because it keeps us current. Yeah. So thank you very much for that report, and it's noted, and thanks again. So moving on the agenda, we've got item 7, which is any other business. I don't have anything listed in my notes, but I don't know whether anybody else in the meeting has anything that they would like to add. No. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And I will now draw the meeting to a close. So enjoy the rest of your days, and thank you very much.
I'll just wait for confirmation when we've had the live stream stopped, Chairman, okay?